Welcome to From the South. I'm Laura Prada from our Telesur studios in Caracas, Venezuela. We begin with our news, but first, we take a look to our headlines. Cuban Medical Brigade has arrived to the Turks and Caicos Islands to help fight COVID-19 pandemic. Nigerian military mobilized on Monday in the northeast of the country following recent attacks by terrorists linked to the Islamic State terrorist group. In China, the city of Beijing recorded 66 new domestically transmitted cases of COVID-19. We begin with our news. You stay with us. With our news, a new Cuban medical brigade has arrived to Turks and Caicos Islands in the Caribbean to help fight the COVID-19 pandemic. The Director General for Latin America and the Caribbean at the Cuban Foreign Minister, Eugenio Martinez, informed on Twitter that the team of 20 Cuban medical health professionals arrived safely to the Caribbean country when they were welcomed by Deputy Governor Anja Williams. Brigades just like this one are already working in 28 countries providing help in the face of the international health emergency due to COVID-19. The Honduras-Cuba Friendship Association has spoken in favor of the nomination of Cuba's Henry Reeve Medical Brigades for the Nobel Peace Prize. Vice President of the Solidarity Organization, Oscar Rolando Ramos, explained that Honduran activists have started a campaign for the Nobel Peace Prize to be awarded to the Cuban health personnel due to their efforts to combat COVID-19 in dozens of countries across the world. Through a promotional video, the association invited compatriots to promote the nomination while indicating steps to endorse it by signing petitions. In Venezuela, the newly appointed authorities of the National Electoral Council have been officially sworn in at the body's headquarters in Caracas this Monday. The officials were appointed by the Supreme Court of Justice last Friday, following dialogue between the government led by President Nicolás Maduro and sectors of the opposition. Tibisay Lucena, who led the electoral body for 15 years in the midst of repeated far-right attacks, has been also replaced among other magistrates. The body will now move to prepare parliamentary elections for this year. The Vice President of Venezuela, Delcy Rodriguez, has reassured citizens that all economic sectors are going to be safeguarded during the reopening of the country after the pandemic.
In our formula, which was created using scientific recommendations and from state governors and majors, it also considered international experience. It led us to the 7-days on, 7-days off plan. Today, on June 15, we have entered a second phase where we incorporate new sectors in the reopening of the economy to guarantee our right to development and to work.
And in Bolivia, the quarantine will continue in the department of Santa Cruz despite the government's orders it be lifted. The governor of Santa Cruz, Rubén Costas, announced that the lockdown in his department will continue until June 30th. Santa Cruz is the most affected region in Bolivia with over 4,800 confirmed cases and 135 COVID-19 deaths. In Colombia, the FARC party denounced the murder of another former combatant who had signed the peace agreements, bringing the number of those killed to 200. Mario Telles Restrepo, a farmer and father of 3 children, was the latest victim. The murder comes after repeated appeals from the international community to the government to enforce the rule of law and the fundamental rights of social leaders as well as members of political parties and social movements. Over the last 24 hours, Brazil has reported 627 deaths caused by COVID-19 and more than 20,000 new cases, bringing the total number to over 867,000. These figures consolidate Brazil as the second worst hit country by the pandemic, second only to United States. So far, the total number of deaths exceeds 43,000, but health specialists said that by this Tuesday, this number could reach 50,000 and the number of infections could exceed 1 million. Analysts agree that a lack of testing is part of the government's strategies to hide the real figures. To have more details on how is Brazil dealing with the pandemic, we have the following report from Rio de Janeiro from our correspondent, André Vieira. Welcome, André.
Greetings. In the last 24 hours, 627 new deaths caused by COVID-19 were recorded in Brazil. This has raised the death toll to 43,959 victims. Sao Paulo and Rio de Janeiro are the two states most affected by the pandemic, but still, they are moving forward with the easing of lockdown measures in spite of recommendations from the research institutions. Experts from the University of Sao Paulo and Antonio Vargas Foundation have issued warnings that this easing of restrictions can lead to an increase of 71% in deaths in Sao Paulo, where as of Monday, almost 11,000 deaths were already recorded, as the state remains the epicenter of infections in Brazil. Another item of note that happened on Monday was the arrest of 6 people who are under investigation for allegedly carrying out anti-democratic actions and committing crimes against the national security law. Among those detained is Sara Fernanda, known as Sara Winter, the leader of a group of supporters of President Bolsonaro. Last weekend, she fired fireworks at the Supreme Court building. This comes as over the weekend, Brazil was a stage for a new wave of protest against racism and fascism and against the far-right president.
Thank you, André. And Chile has renewed the state of emergency for another 3 months in the face of the coronavirus pandemic. President Sebastián Piñera extended the decree that began in March to contain the spread of the virus. The measures include restrictions on gathering and movement. The announcement also puts public order in the hands of the military and establishes a nighttime curfew across the nation. Chile has officially reported almost 180,000 COVID-19 cases, and its death toll stands at over 3,000. Meanwhile, several organizations in Chile presented a report to the United Nations on the situation of indigenous peoples during the pandemic. The document outlines the deep inequalities that these communities face and highlights their abandonment by Chilean state during the health crisis. Like this, we come to a first break. Remember, follow us on Twitter at Telesur English and on my account at Laura P. Telesur. We'll be right back with some more news. We are back with our news. The Nigerian military mobilized on Monday in the northeast of the country following recent attacks by terrorists linked to the Islamic State terrorist group. The Army and Air Force announced they have successfully repelled the attack on Monguno, killing 20 terrorists, but the terrorist group has warned residents and Hausa and Arabic to stay away from the military and from humanitarian organizations because they could be attacked at any time. The attacks carried in Monguno and in Gansai in Nigeria, Borno State, left over 60 people dead. Zimbabweans has participated in a national day of prayer and fasting in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic as declared by the government. The event held in the capital Harare was attended by government officials and church leaders while most people prayed in their homes. Due to the lockdown, the day was declared by President Emerson Mnangagwa last week. Zimbabwe has recorded 356 coronavirus cases, of which 54 patients have fully recovered, while 4 people have died from the virus.
We have been gathered here for the past 2 hours or so following the proclamation by His Excellency the President, Comrade Emerson Damdom Nangagwa, declaring this day as a national day of prayer and fasting. This has been done against the background of the devastating pandemic of COVID-19 or coronavirus.
And the president-elect of Burundi is set to be sworn in and take office on June 18th. The inauguration ceremony will be held in the Ingoma Stadium in Burundi's capital, Gitega. Evariste Ndayishimiye won the presidential elections in early May with 68.7% of the vote. He was previously held several government positions, among them Minister of Home Affairs and Public Secretary. Urged by the sudden death of former President Pierre Nkurunziza, the Constitutional Court ruled that the president-elect take office before the legal term is scheduled to start in August. Malian President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta announced on Sunday his willingness to talk with opposition leaders amid continuous demonstrations calling for his resignation. President Keïta stated he was looking forward to meeting with the leaders of the opposition movement. Demonstrations has been ongoing in Mali since president's re-election in March. The announcement came after Prime Minister Bobou Cissé was reappointed with the task of forming a government of national unity.
A former ally of the president's now turned opposition figure.
Sudanese officials have announced the discovery of a mass grave suspected to contain the remains of soldiers who attempted to escape military service. Sudan's public prosecutor announced in a press conference the discovery of a mass grave containing around 55 conscripts allegedly killed after they attempted to escape a military training camp in 1988 under the administration of Arab's President Omar al-Bashir.
The case of the Elefon military camp has reached very advanced stages. Perhaps within 2 or 3 weeks, if the fugitives are arrested, they may be brought to justice.
Hundreds of taxi drivers protested in Algeria's capital against new lockdown measures. The drivers gathered in front of a bus station to denounce conditions they called drastic for the resumption of activities. Authorities also decided to end paid leave granted in March to 50% of state employees, although pregnant women and those with children will continue to benefit from the leave. Algeria has so far reported over 10,000 coronavirus cases and more than 700 deaths.
There are illegitimate measures. We have drawn the government's attention to the fact that taxi drivers are unable to work when these measures continue to operate. They even advertise on the private television channels that the government has seen.
Like this, we go for another short break. You stay tuned with us. China, the city of Beijing, recorded 36 new domestically transmitted cases of COVID-19 on Sunday. 34 out of the new cases were either directly or indirectly linked to Xinfadai wholesale market, including 19 people who worked there. All communities in Beijing are returning to level 2 response measures in wake of the new outbreak, which has a total of 79 cases linked to it across 8 districts so far. All the patients are now being treated at Ditan Hospital, with at least 3 in critical conditions. Round-the-clock personnel will be dispatched to every community to check temperatures, inspect and verify health codes, ensure people are not gathering in large groups, and monitor the health of residents. Meanwhile, the opening of indoor public spaces such as sport, fitness, and entertainment venues will be temporarily suspended.
I think there are 2 possible reasons. The first possibility is the seafood or meat contaminated with the COVID-19 virus, as the wholesale market is the source. Many seafood and meat are imported from abroad second possibility is that it's a simple human-to-human transmission outbreak, considering the large stream of people at Xinfadi or wholesale market every day. People at the market are from all areas, and most people at the market are on the move every day.
And the head of the World Health Organization, Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, has called on all countries to remain alert on new outbreaks of the novel coronavirus.
Even in countries that have demonstrated the ability to suppress transmission, countries must stay alert to the possibility of resurgence. Last week, China reported a new cluster of cases in Beijing after more than 50 days without a case in that city. More than 100 cases have now been confirmed. The origin and extent of the outbreak are being investigated.
China's economic activities picked up in May as efforts to contain COVID-19 continued. China's job market remained generally stable in May, with the unemployment rate in urban areas standing at 5.9%. The consumer price index, a main gauge of inflation, rose 2.4% year-on-year in May, moderating from the 3.3% growth in April. From January to May, China's online retail sales reached 4.2 trillion yuan, up to 4.5% year-on-year. Thailand on Monday lifted a curfew that lasted for over 2 months. This comes as the country reported no local cases of new COVID-19 infections over the past 21 days. Meanwhile, the country is moving towards its phase 4 of lifting the lockdown, further easing restrictions on high-risk businesses and leisure activities. However, on the first night after the curfew was lifted, Thailand's total number of infections stands at 13,135, with 2,987 recoveries, while the death toll remains at 58.
It's really great that our lives are gradually getting back to normal. Now we are free to stay outside, either to grab something to eat or to do whatever something, and never need to rush back home before the curfew hour again.
Life has greatly resumed, but I guess it is still sometimes, perhaps 2 to 3 months at least, for everything getting back to what it was before the COVID-19 outbreak.
Mosque malls and parks have reopened in Qatar as authorities are gradually lifting lockdown restrictions. However, residents must follow strict social distancing rules and wear protective masks.
So we are happy, very happy to back to the masjid, and we hope more people to back, and we hope to be same before all the people beside each others, no distances, and this diseases will go, inshallah.
This is a great blessing from God Almighty, from which people were deprived by necessity. The Prophet, peace and blessing be upon him, said there should be neither harming nor reciprocating harm. This is from the Sunnah and the Hadith that people had to adhere to at home until this cloud has passed. So they are now returning to the house of God Almighty, which is a great blessing.
In Pakistan's capital of Islamabad, the police will now be able to take action against people failing to comply with measures to contain the spread of the coronavirus.
For now is to actually implement our standard operating procedures, which are the SOPs, which will help us to reduce the spread of disease. What are the SOPs? Number one SOP is that everybody will be wearing the mask in Islamabad. Now the masks have been made compulsory in entire Islamabad. Anybody who is moving without a mask will be fined. Plus, we have also banned movement of public transport in Islamabad if they are not following the SOPs. Plus, we have also taken measures against shops and offices who are violating the SOPs. In Islamabad, we have empowered Islamabad police to take action. Plus, we have magistrates over here. There are more than 9 magistrates who are working round the clock in the field. Plus, we have also hired volunteers. We call them the Tiger Force. They're also with us. They are working as our eyes and ears. They keep on sending me and the magistrates or the complaint number. We have a specific complaint number. They keep on sending information. And on that information, we keep on taking action around the city.
With this information, we come to the end of News Brief. Of course, you can find this and much more other information on our website, tulsarenglish.net, where you can read opinion articles, watch special interviews, and of course, maintain yourself updated about the latest figures related to COVID-19 throughout the world. The invitation is made. You continue with us with Telesur, always together, connecting our global thousands. Until next time, thank you for watching.